watching News Epicenter with me, Maria Shakil. For the past week or so, young hijab-clad girls in Karnataka sloganeering outside of their colleges have dominated every television screen. Their demand, let us wear our hijab and get an education too. The halla and hangama over the hijab has reached a fever pitch, with several politicians also jumping in to share their 2 cents. The fight even reached the Karnataka High Court. The court is hearing pleas by Muslim students who has claimed, in fact, these students have claimed that the imposition of a hijab ban by the college infringes on their rights. The court will continue to hear the matter, but in the meanwhile decided that colleges could resume classes, but no hijabs or saffron shawls or any other symbols of faith would be allowed in the classroom. The decision did not go down well with the petitioners, who took the matter to the Supreme Court. The apex court, though, refused to intervene in the matter. At the core of the arguments in the court is rights versus rules. The Muslim community is divided. Many say the Quran does not mandate a hijab at all. Others, like the petitioners, claim that wearing a hijab is an essential practice of Islam. But let's see what the Quran mandates. It asks women to draw their khimar, which means dupatta, over their bosoms. So can it be argued that banning the hijab is infringing on one's fundamental rights? That's for the courts to decide. But there's a deeper issue that we cannot and should not ignore. That is the right to education. Amidst this clamor for allowing hijabs in colleges and the saffron shawl counter, education has been held ransom. With just 2 months to go for exams, classrooms are empty, students are sitting on strike. According to the 2011 census, literacy rates for Muslim women was only 51.9%, lower than other religious communities. That figure hasn't improved much since then. A 2020 report by the National Statistical Office in fact highlighted that the literacy rate for Muslims was worse than that of SC and STs. Muslims also had the highest proportion of youth aged 30 to 35 who had never enrolled in an educational program. The figure stood at 17% for Muslim males and 21.9% for Muslim females. Without going into the merits or morals of a headscarf, the fear is that imposing such a diktat could see more and more women being forced by their families to drop out. On the other hand, is the need to follow rules of an educational institution, because the purpose of education is mingling and ensuring that you dream high. Joining me on the show is Dr. Zeenat Shaukat Ali. She is the Director General of Wisdom Foundation. Aditya Srinivasan is an advocate. Kamini Jaiswal, lawyer of the Apex Court. We also have Saida Kausar, who is a pro-hijab activist. Saida, the timeline is showing that girls wore uniform till a month ago. Even in the same classroom, most Muslim girls, in fact 90% of them, wear uniform. Then where did this entire hijab come in from?
It is, thank you, Maria, adding for me. It is a modesty to cover our heads in our Islam. And not for everybody who thinks their own thinking, Maria. If anybody want to go, they can go like that only. We won't impose the hijab, because I have also studied and I'm also doing each and everything with hijab, and have learned many things.
Saida, are we confusing too many issues here? Are we forgetting what is hijab, what is burqa, and mixing everything with education?
Yeah.
The question is that Quran, nowhere in Quran it is said that you have to wear a burqa, that you have to cover yourself from head to toe. What is mentioned is...
Head to toe it is an...
Yes. Yeah. What is mentioned is dress modestly. Modesty is the
You can dress modestly and cover a headscarf.
Yes.
And you can follow the rules and religion in same criteria. But the burqa is, it is your wish, Maria. It is not everybody are imposing the burqa for everyone. Islamic dress is a fully dressed a lady. That's all. Wearing a headscarf.
Yes.
And also you are covering your face, it's your wish.
Yes.
And you are opening your
Yes,
face, it's your
but
wish.
Saida, again, here what
We
is
won't
happening
impose,
is
Maria,
that because of these protests, girls
yeah.
Are not getting educated. You know what is happening? The schools and colleges are shut. So who is really suffering because of that? You were fighting for
All
education, but at the cost of that, but education in itself is a casualty here.
Okay. Casualty means following each and everything in the rules and conditions of university, and religion also they want to follow by seeking their knowledge. If you are stopping each and everything, we shut our knowledge and we sit aside. We can't gain anything. By wearing our headscarf, anything, we proceed in education and we are gaining the knowledge and becoming whatever we want.
Kamini Jaiswal,
Only
while I'll continue this conversation with Saida, and perhaps Dr. Zinus Shaukat Ali will be able to explain things to her a little better than me. Kamini Jaiswal, should right to practice one's religion take precedence over right of an institution in enforcing its rules of a uniform?
I agree that it, suddenly you cannot make a rule, no? Just to, you want to target one class. The rules have to be uniform for everybody. And if it has been continuing for so long that, that you can make the color of the hijab a part of the uniform. It is tomorrow if you say Sikh boys in a school cannot wear pagdi, can you suddenly impose that rule? If it is necessary for, the fight is going on all over the world about wearing and, the head gear for different religions. So it is not as if, this, why do you call it religious? It is a practice which is going on. And if these girls have been wearing a hijab for all these days, suddenly you want to impose that because for political reasons, we all know. And said, when did you ever see men carrying orange scarves in this country?
Aditya will respond to that. What came first here, girls wearing hijab or the order of the Karnataka government? And why did it come in the middle of an academic session?
Look, I think
that is what I'm saying. You can't, you are trying to create a problem where there is none.
Okay,
Aditya, there is no problem in girls wearing a hijab, provided they don't, they have to be dressed properly, professionally, and, it has to be in order. Now, you could say the color of the hijab has to be a particular color. But you can't just impose that, no, you will wear only this, not this, not anything else. So it is very, and to bring it down like this suddenly,
but ma'am,
you have to have a discussion about it. You have to have it. Then it has to be a uniform rule for all schools.
Yes,
you can't
it's
just
about
in the middle of some. We all know why it is happening.
Okay, Aditya, respond to my question that I asked you.
Girls are educated and they know why it's being done.
The question that I asked you about the uniform.
Yeah, sure, Maria. Look, I think it's not important to. It's very important to not lose sight of the question at hand. It is not just a question of whether it is okay or not okay to be wearing a hijab. I think the answer to that question is fairly straightforward, and no one, at least no reasonable person, is going to say that you should not be wearing that the Muslim girl should not be allowed to wear a hijab. That's not the question over here. The question is, can you insist as a matter of right and as a matter of fundamental right that a Muslim girl should have to wear a hijab when she attends a government college? That is the question that needs to be looked at, and that is the question that is now being considered by the courts. And the courts will ultimately they will inquire into the various fundamental rights that may or may not be implicated, and decide on the basis of the tests that have been evolved over the many decades of our constitutional jurisprudence as to whether or not there is the protection of a fundamental right for that or not. Now, my own sense is, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but my own sense is that the right to insist on wearing a hijab where there has been a uniform that has been mandated by the college, which itself has followed due process, may not receive the protection of a fundamental right because it may not constitute an essential religious practice.
Yes, but there is a difference in a private institution and a government institution. What the Kerala High Court judgment which came essentially had been said, the ruling that was done by Justice Mushtaq was after considering a petition that was filed by two girls while they were entering a college in Thiruvananthapuram. That had to do with a private institution. Here it is for the government to take a stand.
Right, fair enough, Maria, and I think that's where one needs to look into the fact that this uniform is not something that was randomly put together. It wasn't randomly stitched up. It is something that has the mandate of law. There was, in fact, a council that sat together to decide what the uniform is, and in their wisdom, they said that the uniform needs to be this. Now, of course, it's in the gift of the petitioners to go and challenge the very dress code in the court, which they have done. But the question remains as to whether or not the court is going to say that that their requirements or their what they think should be included as a part of the uniform will receive the protection of a fundamental right or not.
Okay,
it's not something that is not something that is by any means a done deal. It is something that the court will.
Of course, Kamini Jaiswal, at the core of this dispute is the clash between the state-mandated restriction on religious attire in educational institutions on the ground of maintaining public order and uniformity, and on the other hand is about individuals' belief in religious rights. But again, the question is, nobody is stopping an individual from practicing, propagating religion outside an educational institution. Why should that enter the domain of educational institution?
That is not the question, Maria. The question is whether that restriction is a reasonable restriction or not, and whether the constitution mandates it that, you can force somebody to a dress code which is contrary to their religious practice totally. Now and it can't be done so suddenly. The question is, if you ask people, the reasonable restriction has to meet with the times also. If you have been permitting it all this time, why suddenly in the middle of a session you bring about this rule? Now, what did prompt this? And in any case, it is for the state. You can't have hoodlums coming there and stop it. Let the state and the school authorities deal with it. You can't leave the implementation of a rule in the hands of hoodlums. If the state thinks, then they can, they would issue notice to these people will answer that notice. They will, everything has to be done in accordance.
Yes.
With law.
Yes.
It can't be left that because
the state has imposed this,
now 100 people will come and stand on the gate and won't permit a student to enter the school. Is that how you implement a rule?
Look, I don't think it's anybody's case that the implementation of this rule is suddenly being delegated to the hands of hoodlums. I don't think anyone is actually making that suggestion. There is a college authority.
That's what is happening. That's what we are seeing on TV.
But more to the point, we also have to recognize that, look, in our country, there is the Constitution does conceive of India to be a secular state, and there are certain institutions that are supposed to be geared towards the secular state. Now, one of these things is government colleges, and the idea is that government colleges would be arenas where people from different backgrounds and different states and different communities can integrate with each other. Now, we don't want to have situations where these institutions are used as forums and arenas where people are pronouncing their differences. Now, you may have a disagreement about whether this is what the secular nature of our republic should be or not be, but that doesn't take away from the fact that these measures may well have been introduced as an effort to promote integration between people from different backgrounds and different communities. Okay. Now, that's something that we engage. I don't think there has been any engagement.
While we have also seen what has played out in Kerala, when Kerala's Muslim Educational Society had in fact banned any dress that covers the face of girls on campuses, and that is a body that runs over 150 educational institutions. Coming on this, Dr. Zeenat Shaukat Ali, we are listening to a lot of Muslim scholars and thinkers come up with their views. They are saying that this is not really the identity of a Muslim woman. Are you of the opinion that this is completely misconstrued idea of what Islam and Quran stands for?
I think, yes, I'd like to first clear this great misunderstanding and misconception that the hijab is being banned or there is some objection that we are taking to the hijab. The Constitution of India permits a woman to dress the way she wants, and for a man also, and so that constitutional right is always with you. And so therefore, nobody is saying that you don't use the hijab in whatever may be your interpretation of it. The point is here that should it be allowed in a school? You can wear it up to the gate of a school, you feel threatened outside, but once you are in a class, there has to be a uniformity. You have to cut across religion, culture, everything, sit together and learn and educate yourself. And that is the crux of the argument. And in interim order, the honorable judges have said that till the judgment is not given, there can be no religious symbolism that should be allowed within a school. Now, I think that is a great, before we come to Islam, this is a great misconception that that there is a body that is asking people, because I'm getting calls all the time, that why should a woman not be allowed to wear the hijab? Nobody's telling you not to wear it. Whether, whatever may be your interpretation, you can follow it because the government of India is telling you.
Dr. Zeenat Shaukat Ali, we are listening to a lot of versions of Islam, and I'm trying to understand, is hijab really an integral part of women's dressing according to Quran?
No, it is not. It is definitely not, because there is this is the greatest misconception. The word hijab has nothing to do with clothing if you're talking about the Quran. There are 7 verses in the Quran which deal with hijab. And hijab means a curtain, a partition, a distance created. It's like a distance between good and evil. It is metaphorically used. A distance between human beings and God. A distance between the good people and the bad people. A distance when Mary, when she got pregnant and she wanted to isolate herself, she put a partition. She said, I'm going away. Then there is, Solomon waiting for his horses to run. And the horses are running into the darkness. So the hijab of the darkness. So one has to understand contextually what the Quran is saying.
Yes.
And I think this entire word which is being internationally used is incorrect.
Yes.
Please just give me 30 seconds.
Yes, ma'am.
Now the word that is used in the Quran is jilbab, and it is khimar. And in the old days, you must know that Islam did not introduce this. This existed 2,500 years ago in the whole region. You have to understand, you have to know the Persian Empire, the Roman Empire, which was surrounding Arabia. What was the culture of that place? And so you find people cutting across religions had a particular kind of a dress. And the khimar was popularly known as a dress worn over the head, but left bare at the chest. There was a big slit where the chest used to be left open. And so when women went out, during the time when they were in Medina, there was an attack on a woman who went early in the morning to buy milk by a certain tribe. And 3 or 4 people were dead. And this verse was revealed, and it was said to the prophet, to the wives, to the daughters, that when you go out, see to it that you cover your private parts. Please note, the word is private parts. You cover your private parts and you protect yourself.
Yes.
And so therefore, you see, this word became...
Saida, when you chose an institution...
Just 2 seconds more. It became, you dress chastely, you dress decently.
Yes.
You dress with modesty.
Dressing with modesty doesn't really mean to cover yourself the way... Yes, to wear a burqa or a hijab. Ma'am, I agree with you completely. Saida, when you chose an institution to study...
It never prescribed that this is the form of a dress, that is the form.
Right.
But it said that this is the way you cover yourself.
Yes. So when you chose an institution to study, you knew fully well what that institution was offering in terms of its rules and regulation. So when I went to a convent school in Bihar, I knew that I had to follow the rules and regulation, including wearing an uniform there. That was part of choosing an institution, choosing me.
So did I.
Here,
yes, correct.
Yes. Saida, here, if the institution has rules, in terms of uniform, shouldn't that uniform rule be followed, irrespective of religion?
Uniform should be followed, but in the religious matter, now the many Muslim girls are wearing headscarf. Although all are wearing a bindi, same as a turban, and cross mark as a Christian, we Muslim are covering our head, and we are seeking knowledge. By in the college premises, by wearing a uniform and attending each and everything. Now the parents and the children are very much knowledge. They know very well.
Okay, tell
They
me,
are
when you
educated now.
started wearing burqa, because you are wearing burqa, not just the headscarf, which is just hijab. When you
It is
started
my
wearing,
choosing, yeah.
yes, when you chose it according to you, was it a decision of yours or was it a decision of your
Yeah,
family?
it was a decision of mine, and
And at what age?
I have done each and everything, Maria. I thought my husband has given me liberty. I knew to horse ride, I knew to swim, and I was the ex-member of Rifle Association by Sports Authority of India from Bangalore University in Karnataka. I've done each and everything in the premises, and I'm following the headscarf. This now I have chosen. After marriage, I have chosen. It's my wish. I want to come out like this, but not my thoughts. I can explain my thoughts to each and everybody. I can intellect. I know what I can do. Each and everything.
I have exactly 30 seconds for Kamini Jaiswal. Ma'am, go ahead.
Yes. What is the question?
Yes, this question is, we are looking at this discussion. There are several domains of this discussion. It's about identity as well. But when Quran doesn't really mandate it as an essential religious practice or an essential, a religious element, then does it really hold waters in the court of law?
No, I don't think the court is interpreting the Quran. The court is interpreting the constitution and the law, and they are interpreting a person's right to practice and a person's right to do a certain thing, and the extent to which the authorities can go to place a restriction on that. Now, if I repeat, at the cost of repetition, I'm saying, if this is what we are going to argue, that they can't wear a hijab, tomorrow this issue is going to be raised all over for all other religions also.
Okay. Yes.
As long as it does not, come in the way of, what are we talking of? Because we want to show secularism in school, we are not. Now, every school has it. Don't we go to if we go to a convent school, we go to the assembly and then we say the prayers. It doesn't make us non-Hindus.
Ma'am, thank you so
We
much.
join
Always a
an
pleasure to have
institution-
you on my shows. Kamini Jaiswal, Saida Kausar, Aditya and Dr. Zeenat Shaukat Ali. And earlier today, I spoke to the former Aligarh Muslim University Vice Chancellor and a prominent Muslim voice, Lieutenant General Zameeruddin Shah, about this entire controversy. Here's his take on this issue. Listen in. For the benefit of our viewers, tell us, what does Quran say about hijab?
What is the meaning of hijab? Hijab translates from Arabic, it means a barrier. Barrier to a gaze which is improper. Now, hijab is an important injunction in Islam to be implemented both by men and women. It does not apply only to women. If hijab is imposed, fight against it. If hijab is the choice of a woman, fight for it. I believe in the latter. People are trying to enforce the abolition of hijab.
The question is about, where does the choice stop? Shouldn't the choice or your belief in your attire stop at the gates of an institution? If you're entering an institution for education.
Will you prevent a Sikh from wearing a turban? No. My point is that firstly, there is no injunction in Islam for a burqa. This movement in Karnataka, which comes in midterm, instructions on dress should be given at the beginning of a term. Why is it that it was accepted right along and now the movement has come just before elections in several states are due?
Shouldn't then be
the
the
license-
onus on the community and the reformers within the community to perhaps explain to the girls that this is not the step in the right direction, that the purpose of education is to feel liberated rather than go back in time and practice a version of Islam which is not correct perhaps, because the Quran doesn't really talk about hijab, it doesn't talk about burqa, it talks about iqra, it talks about education.
It talks about Iqra, but
Yeah.
I think you are mistaken. It does talk about hijab of the eyes. The relevant paras I'll give you. This is para 24 verses 30 and 31. What does it say? Chapter 24, 30 and 31 pertains both to men and women. It says, cast down your glances and guard your privacy by being chaste. Now, wearing a hijab is by no means something which is unchaste. Now, this wearing of the hijab is a matter of personal choice.